Well, what is happening during the 250 years since our creation? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Listen, if you got a question, I want to help you with that question by giving you some answers, some options. You can always go and run that by me at the website, prudentmoney.com. You'll see a link at the top of the page for Ask Bob. Just go to that link and send in your question. We'll get you taken care of. Very easy. A lot of great resources. We're actually about to roll a couple other things out that I think will really help in getting your level of education and understanding about how money works and how the stewardship aspect of that is so very, very, very important. But that's off the website, www.prudentmoney.com. I did write that new article today on the three things that concern me about what's going on in the Middle East. And it kind of breaks it down for you. And I think simplifies it a little bit as to what we're looking at. That's all at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. You can go see that article on the front page. Once again, www.prudentmoney.com. Let's talk a little bit about 250 years. And of course, that is coming up this, I guess, this summer. They'll be celebrating 250 years of this country being in existence. And Tony Joe, kind of a funny story, Tony Joe always wears a hat. I say always, most of the time wears a hat. And he comes in on Friday into the studio to do the Special Car Corner edition of Prudent Money. And so I was looking at his hat. He's got this hat that says 250 years on it, and talks about what it is and that kind of thing. He loves that hat. Always wears it. And I looked at his hat and I said, Tony Joe, do you know you have a misspelled word on your hat? And he goes, yeah, I did know that. And he said, can you see it? And I said, yeah, it says 250 years of freedom. They left out the R. So this summer, I'm sure we'll be able to celebrate the 250 years of freedom, as they say on the hat. And but some really unusual things have occurred. And I think you'll agree, are occurring all at once. And some of these things, when I had Chuck Bindley, CEO of Crown Financial Ministries, on the program last week, we were talking about this, and as we kind of talked through the main points, we both kind of paused, and it was almost as if we were kind of saying to each other silently, is this really happening? Now, I don't want to over-dramatize this, except for I think that there are some really, really key concerns that are happening in this war that we're just kind of not acknowledging. And it's almost as if the media is afraid to acknowledge it. And of course, all Donald Trump, President Trump wants to do is just tell you we've already won the war. But there's some real things. And I talk about this in the piece that I wrote today, and it's posted at prudentmoney.com. And by the way, while you're at the website, sign up for the Prudent Money email list, and this will get you the information as we write and post and all those good things. So you'll be right to your inbox. Just go sign up for that. So let's kind of talk about the very first thing, and this first concern is that President Trump is reassuring words. There was a day not too long ago that all he had to do is tell you everything was going to be okay, and tell you that they're having great talks, and he's spinning a story. And of course, that's not what's happening. And so he would do that, I believe, because there just wasn't really anything to be too excited about with being in this particular war. I think he's trying to talk the markets up. And there was there's for the longest time there, he could say whatever, and the market would go way up but based on what he said. And that was always the case until it doesn't. It works until it doesn't work. And I think that we are starting to see, especially today, the market started off going up at the open, and as I'm talking today about, it's heading towards the end of the day, and it's going down. So, if everything if the markets felt better about this, everything would be going up. And there's been several times where he's mentioned things that should make the market go up. And the last couple of days of last week, the market was horrible. Lost well over 3% in both days combined. So the reassuring words, a concern. It's almost as if he's kind of lost the psychological superpower that he's had with the markets. And I mean, he has. I'll never forget on election night, the first night of his presidency when he got elected. Of course, he wasn't sworn in yet, but you know what I'm trying to say. So the Dow was crashing. This was the night before the day after the election. The Dow was crashing, coming down dramatically, and for a number of reasons, all had to do with President Trump. And he did something that no other president has ever done, or done successfully. I'll say that. He went on CNBC, and I can't remember if he did it in person or if he did it over the phone. But he talked up everything that he was going to do, and and it was this first day on the job, right? And over optimistic about everything he was going to accomplish. A car in every driveway, a college education for every kid, whatever it was. He was saying all the right things, and this is his superpower. This is what he does well. What the market did, it reversed and started going up. And then we never looked back. So this is probably the first time, and I follow him very closely because of obviously what I do for a living. And managing money, it's important to stay on top of what's going on. I think this is the first time that I've actually watched as the market didn't get reassured with what he was saying. So that is concern number one. Concern number two, the key to everything relies on the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the Strait of Hormuz is 100 miles, a little over 100 miles of waterway in Iran that controls 20% of the global oil production. What that means is that tankers bring 20% of oil through that waterway every day. Well, this is why this is such a concern. It's in Iran, and Iran it's shut down. And I mean, completely shut down. So nobody can move in, can get through that, the Strait of Hormuz. Well, as you shut that down, you shut down, 20% of the global oil production. And now you got a real problem. The problem that you have now is that no tankers can get through. And you've got the price of oil going through the roof. And as that continues to go on a day-by-day basis, everything gets more expensive, from gas to all kinds of products that involve petroleum oil. So everything depends upon that becoming opened up again, and for the oil production to flow as normal. And that's a situation that, immediately, we've talked about this last week. I mean, President Trump jumped in and said, well, if you don't do this, we're going to blow up your infrastructure, your energy infrastructure. And he ended up pausing it, putting all that on hold for a few days or 10 days. And, my concern is that the unintended consequences that happens because it just doesn't make sense why you would want to go and blow up your infrastructure of a major oil producing country, or a country that plays a big part in the oil production. And it just doesn't make sense. There's a potential blowback as a lot of downside given this approach. The number 3 observation: does it make sense to obliterate Iran's energy infrastructure? We could almost make observation 3, observation 2. It just doesn't it seems like it's a potential for collateral damage. And I'm no military expert, obviously far from it. And there's very smart minds that he has to that he talks to and consults with. And it makes me think that something else is going on. Watch the left hand, don't pay attention to what the right hand's doing. It would have to, because it just doesn't make any sense. We'll get back to this here in just a second. We're up against a break. This is Bob Brooks. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Hello, this is Bob Brooks. Proverbs 22:3 and Proverbs 27:12 are the exact same verse word for word. I call them the stewardship verses of risk. A prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. On the Prudent Money Radio Show, we teach about risk, how to identify it, how to figure it out, and what to do about it. We believe that to be a prudent steward, you have to be a good risk manager. Listen to the Prudent Money Radio Show on Bible School Radio 91.3. Prudent Money, home of the modern day steward movement.
Dynamic, practical, life-changing.
There's no point in going to church and not letting the Christ who gave birth to the church on the day of Pentecost change your life.
Join us each day as Pastor Paul Shepherd applies the timeless truth of Scripture to everyday life. It's Destined for Victory on this great station.
Weekday afternoons at 3:30 here on Bible School Radio, KDKR.
This is Rob Randall, your host and teacher of the Invisible War radio program. The Invisible War is the study of God's Word on how to walk in Christ's victory and the spiritual battles we face against the powers of darkness. Join me every Sunday morning at 9 right here on KDKR and KYJC in Commerce, your station for life.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. If you have a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. There is a site, there's a link, at the top of the page, and you can click through. It says Ask Bob, and I'll get you taken care of. It's all real easy to get that information. Just go to the website, www.prudentmoney.com. We're talking about the article that I posted today. I'd encourage you to go read it. Talking about the observations, the concerns that I've got, and the concern number 3 is saying, okay, then we're going to go in. If you're not going to open up, we're going to go in and blow everything up, the infrastructure, and it just doesn't make sense to me, because it seems like that there would be some potential collateral damage that goes along. There's a lot of things that could go wrong. And besides the fact that you're putting troops in harm's way. I mean, that's obviously the main concern. But we're talking about a situation here where you're up against an opponent such as Iran that for the last 47 years fighting the USA, hating everything to do with the USA. They're ready to, and they're set to do anything. And I think that, that's obviously a major concern. I mean, this has the potential to set off a global economic shock if the U.S. were to be this aggressive. And, at some point, he's got to stop threatening and delaying, and he's got to say, I told you, if you kept doing this, I'm going to do this. And he's got to take action. And it genuinely concerns me. And, as I watch a lot of TV news and read quite a bit, there's just not enough that's being written about all the things that could happen. I mean, something else that could happen is that you've had Iran taking out some of the oil companies and various infrastructures of other companies such as Saudi Arabia, Dubai, and what could end up happening is this breaks into a larger war. And I think as I read a lot of this, and some of it just, common sense says, I don't know that that's such a good idea. Once again, not trying to play a military expert by any stretch. It's one of these things where I didn't even know the number had gotten to be this many. Maybe it's for the fact they already had troops in place. But their total troops were over 50,000. Now, I don't think I got that wrong. I don't think I heard that wrong or read that wrong. That came from NBC News at 5 o'clock yesterday. But 50,000, I hope I'm wrong. 50,000 troops makes me think that that's what they're going to do. It's a ground game, boots on the ground, and really that's about, to me, the more effective way of getting this taken care of. Would hate to see it. You're talking about loss of life, putting our soldiers in harm's way. And if we take a step back and think about why we're even doing this, because of a nuclear bomb and the potential of them to using that bomb, it sure would be nice to know that we maybe took some facilities out that were in charge of producing it. Just a thought. But that's what I'm looking at, and that's what my concern is. And like I said, I just don't think that they are talking enough about. And as we talked, it's the 250th birthday coming up in the USA. The third thing that's happening is we hit a big milestone, and in fact, a lot of the way things are going today, this milestone is probably not a big a deal because it's just we've hit another level, no big deal. Today or yesterday, we hit $39 trillion in debt. $39 trillion. Now that is 1 trillion is a million millions. Let that sink in for a second before we move on. A million 1 millions. And I guess as the country can still print money, and the majority of elected leaders in Washington remain outwardly unconcerned about it, not concerned about something that is a big deal. And, I've always said about debt that debt's not a problem until it's a problem. then when it becomes a problem, it's an overnight nightmare. And I truly believe that to be the case. Yeah, this won't be any big deal. We can borrow. Trump wants to borrow another 200, just another 200 billion for this fight in this war we're in. And in fact, kind of going back and forth here, you got over 50,000 troops. You're asking for $200 billion more for a war we've already quote unquote won. Makes no sense. That's why I unfortunately think that we're going to see ground troops in this next phase. But we've got seven more days before the deadline runs out. With the $39 trillion level surpassed, we got to look at kind of where that puts us. And it's just like anything else. If you're head of a family, you got kids, you got crazy amounts of debt, it limits you to your options. The more debt that you incur, the less options you have. That's no different than what we're seeing today. We're the richest country in the world. But yet if you look at our P&L sheet, it doesn't look like it doesn't support that claim that we're the richest, most powerful country in the world. You got all that debt, and there's just absolutely no way to get rid of it. And the bigger problem is that there's no place to cut back. I mean, if you look at where this money's being spent, I think you'll agree there's just really no place that you can cut back and reduce the debt. It does, though. Yeah, there's three big things that jump off the page to me. First, we talked about this, reduces options. The second is that it can cause inflation. And then the third, and none of these are good if these take place. The third is the pressure to increase interest rates, which runs with the inflation. And so not good options. And that's kind of where we are right now, and what's happening. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. If you get a chance, go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com and sign up for the Prudent Money email list. We did post something today about what's going on with the war in the Middle East. Go check that out and let me know what you think. As we wrap things up today, and by the way, too, if you have a question, that you can get that answered at the website, prudentmoney.com. While we're wrapping things up, I wanted to go over something I found was very, very interesting. Is that, of course, as you know, you're painfully aware that gas is going up and going up in price. There's something, though, I didn't know this till today. There's something about $4 a gallon gas that is the big psychological roadblock for most people. In fact, I read that gas station owners will actually reduce and take a little bit of a loss to keep a gallon of gas above $4. And what it does, for instance, people drive less or consolidate trips. Demand shifts towards smaller, fuel-efficient vehicles. People feel inflation more intensely than it affects the markets. Markets are watching this as well. I mean, anything that affects spending or anything that affects the numbers that we watch for recession, And that's the problem with all this inflation that we're dealing with. So I got to tell you, I think, at a very important crossroads, and what happens over the next couple of weeks should tell us a lot about, it's keep your eye on what direction they're going. And I don't think that they got 50,000 troops down in the Middle East just for reinforcement. So keep an eye on it, and we'll continue to talk about this and things that you can do to get you through this particular situation in our country's history. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com, because I am all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.